Hi everyone, it's Sherry, and today I'm going to be using the Penny Black Flower Medley stamp set. And I'm going to place a piece of Arches cold pressed paper into my MISTI. And I'm going to use some Lawn Fawn jet black ink and stamp this image all over this piece of watercolor paper. I'm using my MISTI here because the paper is pretty textured, and I know I will not immediately get a good impression. So that's the beauty of the MISTI. You can stamp several times until you get the image the way that you want it. So I'm going to stamp this one more time, and then I'm going to clean off the stamp, and I'm going to move it into a different position. And I'm just going to continue doing this till I get the entire piece of paper pretty much covered with this image. I've been away for a couple of months. Well, actually 4 months to be exact. Tending to some other things that needed my attention. And I have also gone back to school. So I've just been a busy little bee. And I'm really excited to be back and sharing my cards with you. Okay, now that I have my background covered, I'm going to be using my Derwent INKTENSE pencils. And I'm using only 2 pencils. I'm using Chili Red, and then I'll be using Leaf Green for the leaves. And I am just following the lines that are already drawn in the image, and I just put down a little bit of color, and I'm going to use my water brush to pull that color out. You could certainly use a watercolor brush with some water and do the same thing. I just found this one easier to do these little spaces here with my detailer water brush. And now I want to add just a little bit more contrast, a little bit deeper color. So I am bringing my water brush to the tip of the pencil and picking up the pigment from the pencil itself. And once again, I'm following the lines that the artist has already drawn for me, putting down a little bit of darker color, and then I am blending that out. Really simple watercolor technique here. And then I'll just go around to each one of the roses and the rose buds and do the same thing. I'm definitely not going to make you watch me do this entire panel here. So I'm just scribbling just the smallest amount of color. Now I'm going in with the leaf green. You can see I've done some of the leaves already. And essentially doing the same thing that I did on the actual roses. Again, if I need a little bit deeper color, I will go straight to the tip of the pencil and pick up the pigment from there. I think I will do this last one, and then I will magically come back and the entire thing is finished. Now I'm going to use some Distress Ink REINKER. I'm going to use that as a watercolor, and I think I have a silver brush size 8 here. And I'm just going in and laying down a little bit of water. And then I will go in and pull out some of that REINKER. And this is in antique linen. And if you've ever used the Distress Ink as a watercolor, you know that the antique linen is pretty light. But if you use the REINKER, it is a little bit more concentrated color, so you get a little deeper color. I'm just spreading out the Distress Ink. And then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to get some more water and lay down a little bit of water and go through the process again. I am being careful of going around the leaves and the roses. However, INKTENSE, they do not tend to lift because it is an ink as opposed to a watercolor. There are some colors that will lift just a little, but pretty much once they dry, they're dry. I'm just going to continue going around until I have this entire white background covered. And I'm going to take the largest basic rectangle die from the Simon Says Stamp rectangle die set. I'm going to take that over to my Big Shot and cut out my panel. And now I'm going to use some vintage photo and my blending tool, and I'm going to go around the edges of my background piece and create a little vignette. And I'm just going along the edges. I am pulling the color in a little bit more at each of the corners, and I'm darkening those up just a little bit more. And now I've gone around the entire panel. Go back and touch up that first corner. And now our panel is complete. I'm going to be using the You Matter stamp set from Simon Says Stamp, one of my absolute favorites. And I'm also going to be using the die that you can get separately. I've cut that out 3 times from black cardstock, and I am taking my Zig 2A glue pen, and I'm just dotting the glue along those letters. They are very thin, and this seemed to work the best for me. I left one of the die cuts in the paper, popped out the other 2. Makes it a little bit easier to stack all 3 of them together. And this is going to create a pretty chunky die cut for me. And I'll pop that out. And now I'm going to put some acrylic blocks on it while it dries. And I pulled out my mini Misty along with the Misty Grid Transparency from Simon Says Stamp. This is going to help me line up that Happy Birthday to so that it is straight across the card. And I will be stamping that in some VersaFine Onyx black ink. And again, I'm using my Misty. This is the mini, because I know that I'm going to have to stamp it more than once. Okay, now that that's finished, I'm going to cover the back with some foam tape. And I have a A2 size card base here out of Neenah 110 pound. And I'm going to pop up the panel on the front of the card. And once again, I'm going to use that 2A glue pen and do the same thing. I'm going to dot the back side of the U die cut, and then I'm going to place that directly under the Happy Birthday to, and I'll probably place more acrylic blocks on top of the U while it dries. Use my tweezers to help me out here. When that dries, I'm going to do the inside. Again, I'm using my Mini Misty and the Grid Transparency just to help me figure out where I want to line up the inside of the card, or the sentiment for the inside. And this time I'm using the U and make the world a better place. Ended up deciding that needed to be in the center. Now I can close the door, pick that up, take off the transparency, and again I'm going to be using the VersaFine ONYX black ink. Ink that up and close the door. And because this is a smooth cardstock, generally with that ink you can get a perfect impression with just one go. And last but not least, I am going to use my Spectrum Noir clear glitter pen. I'm going to get it going here on the side of my grid sheet. And I'm just going to put just a little bit of sparkle on all of those roses. If it picks up some of that vintage photo distress ink that's around the edges, I'm just wiping that off the brush over at the side. So that's my card for today. I'm calling this my vintage birthday card. Thanks for joining me today, and as always, the supplies I've used are listed below, as well as over on my blog, where I will have pictures of the supplies. Here are a couple more videos that may be of interest to you. Thank you so much for joining, subscribing, and thumbs upping, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you again soon. Bye now.